After a couple nice wins coming out of the trade deadline, the Boston Bruins lost last night to the Ottawa Senators and were officially getting chirped by Senators fans.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Friday, March 14th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day. It's available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, and we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. On the show today, we are going to discuss last night's loss to the Ottawa Senators and also preview tomorrow's game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. All right, now for those who don't know, I grew up in Ottawa. I remember being there when the Senators franchise was announced. I was in the community center near the pool, going in for a swim, and thought, oh, that's pretty cool. By then, though, I was already well entrenched as a Boston Bruins fan, but always kind of had a soft spot for the Senators. And my whole family living in Ottawa, Sens fans, my sister and her husband last night went to the game, and I got a couple chirps following the game, which is where we are at now as a franchise supporting base, getting chirped by a team that hasn't even been in the playoffs since 2017. Not only that, but during the game, there was quite a loud Ullmark's better chant as Linus Ullmark led his team to victory while Jeremy Swayman was yanked after the first period, allowing 4 goals and putting the Bruins in a 4-1 hole. And that was the biggest storyline to me last night for the Boston Bruins, the continued underwhelming play of our boy Jeremy Swayman. Early on in the season, he was perhaps given a bit of a pass because he missed all of training camp. He was without his best friend and potential soulmate in Ullmark, who had been traded to the Ottawa Senators in the offseason, getting used to a new goalie partner in Joonas Korpisalo. But we're well beyond that at this point. He's now made a career-high 48 starts. He's got a record of 20, 22, and 6 with an .897 save percentage, which is well below his career average, which has dipped to .913. And there's questions beginning to arise as to whether he is worth that huge contract that he held out for not really held out. We shouldn't say that he sat out training camp for, at least, in order to sign. We all remember those 64 million reasons quote from Cam Neely during that whole debacle. And yeah, there's real questions about whether he can carry the load as a number 1 goaltender. And I believe it was Ty Anderson on social media pointing out how when Swayman starts 3 games in a row, which he did last night, that was his 3rd start in a row, his numbers really dip in that 3rd start, which kind of gives you the impression that a lot of his success to date was kind of tied to that tandem with Linus Ullmark. And while Joonas Korpisalo has been pretty good so far this season for the Bruins, perhaps it would have been smarter for interim head coach Joe Sacco to read those tea leaves and go with Korpisalo last night instead of Swayman. Now, heading into a big game on Saturday against the Tampa Bay Lightning, you wonder whether you can go back to Swayman or if Korpisalo is the guy that should get the start. Meanwhile, at the other end of the ice, Linus Ullmark was very good. Not like great. It was 5-3 at one point after the Bruins had allowed Ottawa to jump out to that 4-1 lead. The Bruins kind of gaining a bit of momentum there. And then you get maybe the save of the year from Linus Ullmark, who looked like a shortstop out there, diving across the crease, making a desperation glove save on Mason Lohrei on a one-timer from the right face-off circle. That would have made it 5-4. But he made that massive save to preserve the 2-goal lead for Ottawa, and they went on to add an empty netter to win 6-3. Ullmark, you could see that he was laughing after making that save. He said, sometimes you wonder, how did that happen? Like, how did I get here? Just have to smile and laugh about it because you saved it and you let it go. Focus on the next one. You don't want to make a brilliant save like that, he said, and then end up having a bad goal right after, because sometimes you're so caught up in the moment, feeling like a stud now after making that save or something. Just an incredible save from Linus Ullmark that really saved the game for the Senators and helped them extend their record in March to 6-0-1. The Bruins unable to pick up a point, falling that much further behind Ottawa, who's in the first wildcard spot, that much further out of the wildcard race as a whole. The Senators now 5 points ahead of Columbus. The Bruins are 2 points behind the Blue Jackets, but with 2 more games played. So this was kind of a heartbreaker for the Bruins in terms of maintaining their very slim playoff hopes as they were, and one in which, Linus Ullmark stepped up for Ottawa. Jeremy Swayman did not for the Boston Bruins, and I know a lot of the fan base is kind of down on him right now. I shared that the Sens fans had been chanting that on the Locked On Bruins X account. Got a lot of responses like, well, yeah, obviously they're right. Ullmark is better. But conversely, there was a lot of wait till the playoffs because we know how Swayman had outperformed Ullmark in the postseason for the Bruins over the past couple of years. Very early on for Senators fans to be chirping. They haven't even qualified for the playoffs yet, much less win a round or two. So let's kind of tap the brakes on that. But you have to give credit to Ullmark for that game-saving stop. If the Bruins had been able to make it 5-4, maybe they're able to get that extra goal and earn at least a point last night. But the hole that they were in following the first period, 4 goals allowed by Jeremy Swayman in that frame, really put them too far behind the 8 ball. And a .733 save percentage last night, 4 goals on 15 shots, just not going to cut it for the Bruins. After he had, to his credit, put together a couple of really strong starts, shutting out Tampa Bay, beating the Panthers, but perhaps it would have been better to go back to Korpisalo for that one and then rest Swayman for tomorrow's game against Tampa, which we will preview later on in the podcast. Coming up, we will look at some more stats and signals to take away from last night's loss to the Ottawa Senators. If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee. I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it. And that's why we turned to Trade. Let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste-tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. If you don't love your first bag, no worries. Trade will replace it for free until they get it just right. That's drinktrade.com drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl for 40% off your first order. drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you can get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Sorry. Thanks so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. It's available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And last night, the Bruins lost big time to the Ottawa Senators, a 6-3 decision in Ottawa, where the Senators solidified their playoff hopes while the Bruins took a further hit. Now, there were some positives in this one from a Bruins perspective. We had a couple Bruins scoring their first goals in black and gold. Casey Mittelstadt popped one past Linus Ullmark, and then Marat Khusnutdinov scored his first on a beautiful breakaway where he just blew past the Senators' defense off a feed from Elias Lindholm. Jacob Lauko getting an assist on that one as well. David Pastrnak scored his 34th goal of the season to make it 4-2. The Bruins got as close as 5-3 after that Khusnutdinov goal, which, again, was just a beautiful one that showed his speed and displayed why the Bruins were interested in acquiring him. Let's just go back here to the trade deadline. A lot of people still down on the Bruins for the Brad Marchand trade, but to get Lauko, Jacob Lauko, and Khusnutdinov for Justin Brazeau, like I would have settled just for one of those guys in exchange for Justin Brazeau. To get both of those guys was a real win for Don Sweeney. You look at the Casey Mittelstadt trade, flipping Charlie Coyle for Casey Mittelstadt in and of itself is a win for the Bruins. And then to add a top prospect and a second-round pick on top of that, I mean, that's really nice work here from Don Sweeney. The vibes are low following last night's loss, and we're still hurting from that Marchand deal. But, I mean, come on. Those are really good additions made by Don Sweeney prior to the trade deadline. Khusnutdinov looks like a keeper. Mittelstadt looks like a guy who could be a middle six bona fide center for this team. He's on a 3-game point streak since being acquired from Colorado. He had the goal last night, 3 shots, 2 blocks, and a hit, just filling the stat sheet for the Boston Bruins last night. He had a team-high 3 shots, tied with Pavel Zacha and Morgan Geekie. Cole Koepke leading the way with 6 hits for the Bruins as well. On the blue line, you had Parker Witherspoon chipping in an assist. Mason Lohrei with 3 shots, as did Andrew Peeke. That one that really should have been a goal, but alas, Linus Ullmark came up big. Bruins were outshot last night, 31-25. They struggled on the faceoff dot. But again, the big stat of the night was the .733 save percentage posted by Jeremy Swayman, allowing 4 goals on 15 shots. One of them was a power play goal, but 3 coming at even strength. Korpisalo came in and saw the same amount of shots and stopped 14 of them for a .933 save percentage. Perhaps he should have been given the start, to be sure. And if we're looking at signals to take away from last night's game, again, some of these guys that are newly acquired really fitting in. Khusnutdinov, it should be noted, had 17 minutes and 18 seconds of ice time, which was fourth highest among all Bruins forwards, just ahead of Mittelstadt. So these guys aren't coming in as bottom six guys just getting limited amount of ice time. Joe Sacco's throwing them right in there, and they're doing quite well to perform. Patrick Brown, John Beecher, Mark Kastelik getting by far the least amount of ice time. I said the other day that there's like 7 forwards on the Providence Bruins I'd like to see up more than Patrick Brown. I realize that we need to fill out checking lines and such for the Boston Bruins, and you need guys who are perhaps better suited for depth roles. But, I mean, perhaps you put Jacob Lauko on the fourth line and recall Oliver Wahlstrom to play with Lindholm and Khusnutdinov at the very least, or you bump Cole Koepke down from the second line, or Vinny Lettieri. Like, there's opportunities for guys to jump up into the middle six here, and I'd rather see some scoring options in there along with like Lettieri or Koepke being bounced down to the bottom six, as opposed to keeping a guy like Patrick Brown up in the lineup and kind of wasting a roster spot. I don't know. That's a tough one for me to not have. I realize you want to also keep those guys down in Providence for the playoff run and to give that team the best chance of succeeding, give those guys more prime ice time than they would get in Boston right now. But, I mean, why not call up these kids, see what you have in them, or call up Wahlstrom at least, who's been playing very well down in Providence since being sent down. It really can't hurt to try to switch things up. And look, you're still kind of right in the playoff race. It's not looking too good at the moment, obviously, with not very many games remaining on the schedule. Far fewer than some of the opposition. But it's definitely worth calling some guys up and at least giving yourself the best possible lineup, or giving guys a chance to prove that they belong in the NHL heading into next season. The Bruins, again, only 2 points out of the wildcard spot, but they have 15 games remaining. The Blue Jackets, who are in that spot, have 17 games remaining, and the Bruins have to leapfrog the Red Wings, the Canadiens, and the Rangers as well in order to take that spot. So all very, very unlikely. Now, the Bruins do have a game tomorrow against Tampa Bay before heading out on a lengthy road trip, and we'll preview that one here as the podcast continues. Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan your long-term goals. All right, the Boston Bruins will be in action on Saturday, hosting the Tampa Bay Lightning before heading out on a pretty lengthy road trip. Actually, no, they have one more game at home before heading out on that road trip. They'll host the Tampa Bay Lightning tomorrow, and then the Buffalo Sabres on Monday, and then they will head out to Vegas, California, Detroit before heading home. That's the rest of the month. We'll focus now just on the Lightning game. Of course, the Bruins shockingly beat Tampa Bay last Saturday by a score of 4-0. The Lightning are currently on a 3-game losing streak, including that game against the Bruins. Then they lost to the Hurricanes, and most recently in a shootout to the Philadelphia Flyers. So they'll be looking to get back on track against the Bruins, and let's be honest, likely should. Now, the Bruins have taken 2 games already of the 3 against Tampa so far this season. It's the 4th and final meeting between these 2 teams, and the Bruins 3-5-2 over their past 10. Lightning 6-3-1, and they're just straight up the better team. The Lightning have the second best offense in the NHL, averaging almost 3.5 goals per game. They're allowing only 2.69, which is the 8th best defense overall. Special teams, Lightning 6th on the power play, 8th on the penalty kill. For the Bruins, the numbers are almost the exact opposite. 29th on the power play, 22nd on the penalty kill, 25th ranked offense, 2.72 goals per game, and 22nd ranked defense, allowing 3.15 goals per game. Tampa led in scoring over their past 5 games by Jake Guentzel, 5 goals, 6 points. The Bruins by David Pastrnak, who's got 7 points, 5 assists over the past 5 games. It will likely be Andrei Vasilevsky in net for Tampa. He's got a .920 save percentage. The Bruins probably should turn to Joonas Korpisalo, who's got an .895 save percentage so far this season. The Lightning, much more established as a playoff team in the Eastern Conference. They are 3rd in the Atlantic right now, 2 points behind the Toronto Maple Leafs for 2nd, and 6 points behind the division-leading Florida Panthers. Looking like a Toronto-Tampa first-round series. Toronto, of course, has only beaten Tampa in the playoffs in the new era that they're in, so that could favor them. The Bruins are currently 11 points behind Tampa, and again, 7 points behind the Ottawa Senators. Time really running out on this team. When you look at goal differential, they're back to 14th in the Eastern Conference. In terms of point percentage, they're 13th, behind the Islanders now even. So that loss last night to the Senators really hurting Boston's dwindling chances. But it's great to see them playing more up-tempo hockey. It's great to see the speed that they added in Mittelstadt and Khusnutdinov specifically. Like, I was blown away by that breakaway opportunity that he had last night that he made good on. And while things are looking bleak in the short term, those are some good guys that are really complementary scorers that add to this club. The Bruins, we'll talk about this more, of course, as we head into the offseason, but they'll have like $28 million to spend this summer with, maybe Brad Marchand comes back, but they don't really have, they'll have to take care of Mason Lohrei, who's a restricted free agent. Hopefully they can kind of bridge him. They'll have Jacob Lauko to sign, Morgan Geekie, John Beecher as restricted free agents. Maybe Cole Koepke, but they'll be able to spend bigger money elsewhere, with Swayman already being wrapped up, with their core guys signed long-term. So they could really add to this mix here and hopefully turn things around as quickly as next season. Mittelstadt, Khusnutdinov, big wins on the trade market for Don Sweeney, in my opinion. All right, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, my friends. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out the podcast this week. Please do have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Check out the Locked On NHL podcast next where you'll get league-wide look from our local experts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.